various industries to discuss and exchange ideas in the effort to build a more sustainable future. Currently, the global climate is undergoing significant changes that are expected to accelerate in the future. Various studies have stated that these climate changes are undeniable. The risks associated with climate change can lead to financial problems for companies. To achieve a more sustainable future, leaders need to collaborate and build partnerships in facing these complex challenges. Therefore, the second Asia Sustainability and ESG Summit is being held as a platform for stakeholders from across Asia, including academics and ESG practitioners from various industries, to discuss and exchange ideas in the effort to build a more sustainable future. Currently, the global climate is undergoing significant changes that are expected to accelerate in the future. Various studies have stated that these climate changes are undeniable. The risks associated with climate change can lead to financial problems for companies. To achieve a more sustainable future, leaders need to collaborate and build partnerships in facing these complex challenges. Therefore, the second Asia Sustainability and ESG Summit is being held as a platform for stakeholders from across Asia, including academics and ESG practitioners from various industries, to discuss and exchange ideas in the effort to build a more sustainable future. Currently, the global climate is undergoing significant changes that are expected to accelerate in the future. Various studies have stated that these climate changes are undeniable. The risks associated with climate change can lead to financial problems for companies. To achieve a more sustainable future, leaders need to collaborate and build partnerships in facing these complex challenges. Therefore, the second Asia Sustainability and ESG Summit is being held as a platform for stakeholders from across Asia, including academics and ESG practitioners from various industries, to discuss and exchange ideas in the effort to build a more sustainable future. Currently, The global climate is undergoing significant changes that are expected to accelerate in the future. Various studies have stated that these climate changes are undeniable. The risks associated with climate change can lead to financial problems for companies. To achieve a more sustainable future, leaders need to collaborate and build partnerships in facing these complex challenges. Therefore, the second Asia Sustainability and ESG Summit is being held as a platform for stakeholders from across Asia, including academics and ESG practitioners from various industries, to discuss and exchange ideas in the effort to build a more sustainable future. Currently, the global climate is undergoing significant changes that are expected to accelerate in the future. Various studies have stated that these climate changes are undeniable. The risks associated with climate change can lead to financial problems for companies. To achieve a more sustainable future, leaders need to collaborate and build partnerships in facing these complex challenges. Therefore, the second Asia Sustainability and ESG Summit is being held as a platform for stakeholders from across Asia, including academics and ESG practitioners from various industries, to discuss and exchange ideas in the effort to build a more sustainable future. Currently, the global climate is undergoing significant changes that are expected to accelerate in the future. Various studies have stated that these climate changes are undeniable. The risks associated with climate change can lead to financial problems for companies. To achieve a more sustainable future, leaders need to collaborate and build partnerships in facing these complex challenges. Therefore, the second Asia Sustainability and ESG Summit is being held as a platform for stakeholders from across Asia, including academics and ESG practitioners from various industries, to discuss and exchange ideas in the effort to build a more sustainable future.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon here from Indonesia. So I would like to take over from now on. Firstly, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you for joining us in today's event. And thank you also for taking your time to register and participate in this event. We are really thrilled to have you here as we explore the key topics in sustainability and also ESG. So right now, I'd like to take a moment to express also my gratitude that we are all here gathered today in an enormous condition and in a very good condition. So I am here, Anissa from CSGS, and I'll be your MC/moderator who will guide you throughout today's event. And this event is organized by ESGI Dataset from the Center for Environmental, Social, and Governance Studies, and also in collaboration with Department of Accounting in the Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas Airlangga. So ESGI Dataset is a platform that provides the corporate data ranging from annual reports to sustainability reports. And ESG Dataset is also one of the business lines in CSGS, while CSGS itself is an ESG research center based at Universitas Airlangga that specializes in sustainability issues. And also CSGS has developed a global database on corporate sustainability practices compiled from the Asian countries, also to leading companies around the world. And for this fifth research lecture for today's event, we have some agendas that are coming ahead. So firstly, we are going to start with a 60-minute presentation from our esteemed speaker here, Professor Noor Adwa binti Sulaiman, followed by a brief introduction of the ESGI dataset and also 30 minutes Q&A session. And at the end, we'll also distribute the feedback forms and take some group photos, and also we'll come to the end to wrap up the event. Also, I would like to notify all the audience here that please remember to stay with us until the end of the session, because completing the attendance form is necessary in order to claim your e-certificate later on. Also, please keep an eye on our group chat as we will be sending the link to the certificates over there. Also, I believe Professor Adwa has also joining us here. So as we are about to begin, let me bring up a very brief biography for our speaker in today's event. So, Professor Adwa.
Madam Anissa? Okay.
All right. So we have Professor Adwa here. Professor Adwa is an associate professor of Department of Accounting, Faculty of Business and Economics of University of Malaya, Malaysia, and also the head of Department of Accounting with a Scopus research publication as 24 and also H index as 5, also as also an expert in an auditing and corporate governance field. So here we go. How are you, Professor? Good afternoon here from Indonesia. I believe it's only 1 hour ahead right now over there, right? Am I right? All right. So, Professor, without any further ado, I welcome you to begin the presentation. Please, Professor, the time is yours.
Thank you so much, Puan or Madam Anissa, for your introduction. Let me share my screen first. Or someone. Okay. Yeah. Give me a few seconds. Let me sort things out first.
Sure, Professor.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Oh, not yet, Professor.
No. How about now?
Yes. It's already on the screen. Now
Okay.
it works. Yeah.
Thank you for introduction. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. Rabbi shrah li wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli, amma ba'd. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon ataupun selamat siang to all, especially to all professors, associate professors, doctors, ladies and gentlemen. privilege to be here meeting all of you online in this platform, to be here at Airlangga University, AU, one of the Indonesian most esteemed institution. So I am truly honored to be given an opportunity to share a bit of my knowledge on the topic of corporate governance. Today, I will topic title from ESG to cybersecurity, key issues shaping corporate governance today. I have been working on the area of corporate governance and auditing for several years now, and in fact, I'm working closely with Pak Ardi and Mas directors and governance. It is also an honor to work with them as well from EU. In terms of I'm not here to give some sort of lecture. It's just more of a sharing session about some of the knowledge that I have with me. So sharing session, it will be divided. First, be talking or discussing about the evolving role of corporate governance. So let's try to understand about the existence of corporate governance from the beginning and until the current practice. In the second part of the sharing session, I will be discussing about what from past research, what are the key issues that have been investigated to date, and potentially in the last part of the lectures, let's discuss a bit more about what are by the corporation and potentially how it would then create a research opportunity for us, the researcher. Right. Now I think it will be good for us to go back to try understand the historical and current development of corporate governance and how current governance practices and the way we conduct our research related to this area. I think it would then be beneficial for us to understand about where that. So it can be traced back in the early of 1900, of which resulted from the expansions or the growth in terms of the size and complexity of a business, or in other words of saying, the emergence of public corporations. So business and then partnership and potentially limited partnership, and then corporation, of which public then been invited to invest in the companies, to put some money, to put the capital. There is a separation between the owner or the shareholders as well as those that managing the business on a daily basis, or the management. So I would say that during those times, the agency theory arose of to explain the principal and agent problem, of which potentially the management may act on their interest rather than acting on the best interest of the shareholders. So as a result, it led to the initial governance framework, for example, in the US, with the establishment of the Securities Act in year 1933, as well as Security Exchange Act in the year of 1934. On governance, on its initial establishment, more about protecting the shareholders' interests, more about to then minimizing the conflict of interest or addressing the agency relationship due to information asymmetry, management that managing the business as well as the shareholders. Now, in the next couple of years, especially in the 1960s to the 1980s, rather than the orientation of corporate governance of more inward looking, if we go back to the early establishment of corporate governance, is very much everything that the companies do, practices, policies, procedures need to be aligned with the interests of the shareholders. It's all about maximizing the shareholders' interests, which is correct because they are the one that put the money in the company. And they have some sort of expectation from the management. Throughout 1960s to 1980s, we can say that the orientation of corporate governance now during that time then go beyond the shareholders, of which, for example, scholars like Edward Freeman introduced a concept of stakeholder theories, social expectation, which then says that companies should also consider the interests of all stakeholders, that include their employees, their customers, communities, and as well, of course, the shareholders. So during this time, people are now talking about the importance of companies to also look at how their business practices, operation can give impact to the environment as well as the stakeholders like in terms of the employee welfare. So the growing expectations of other stakeholders then has shift the focus of the management the stakeholders' interests in the way they manage the business. As a result, governance mechanisms such as board of directors also need to consider aspect of affairs like environment, other stakeholders' interests when forming the oversight function, when they are monitoring the management. Historically, perhaps in the 1980s, a number of corporate scandals happened around the globe, of which I'm going to share with you after this. And as a result, in different jurisdictions, there are various governance reform as to improve the governance. Now, within the historical development of corporate governance, we know that then we have the principal and agent, and then we need to have additional governance mechanism that then be able to also monitor the performance of the management and of the as a company's structure to ensure that the management are then doing the right things, as well as discharging of their accountability and stewardship fully. Now, a numbers, as I mentioned, which I'm going to explain a bit more after this. In the 1990s, various jurisdiction or countries open up their economy. So during that times, businesses cross over border. We are talking about globalization, and due to issue of globalization as well as a numbers of corporate affiliates, there was an governance standard. So, for example, the Cadbury report is issued by the regulators in the UK. Come up with one of the first major code related to corporate governance to formalize corporate governance practices or best practices, emphasizing, for example, especially the board independence, also looking at the aspect of financial reporting and accountability of different governance mechanisms to discharge of their functions, to ensure that at the end of the day, businesses are doing the right things, business practices that protecting not only the expectations or interests of the other stakeholders. As a result, for example, around the globe, including in my country, Malaysia, there was a creation of code of corporate governance, for example, in Malaysian setting, because of the Asian financial crisis 7, which then resulted in noises in the capital market, and people sort of questioning about the quality of governance. As a result, for example, regulator in Malaysia come up with its first Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance in year 2002. So not only in Malaysia but across jurisdictions, people then talking about the need for a formal code of governance that is to ensure that they applying best governance practices in the companies. In early 20s, 2000, for example, the focus of corporate governance very much on risk management. Discuss again in terms, talk about the need for greater transparency by the companies through various disclosure, and the need for companies management as well as other key governance mechanism to be accountable with the roles and function that is in terms of the shift or focus in corporate. We are now embarking into IR 4.0, so aspect of digitalizations is very much important that need to be addressed by the companies. So it is a question of how governance practices can affect related to digitalization of corporations, or the other way around, for example, how digitalization then can give effects to the roles and functions of the governance mechanism, especially the internal governance and its subboard, as well as the role of the internal audit functions. And of course, now we are talking about SDG, ESG, because again, the focus, as I mentioned earlier, based on my earlier presentation, for example, now it's very outward. Social is very much important, and of course, part of it will be on governance. Am I breaking up, or is it okay then, guys?
Hello, Professor. So I thought that your connection is somehow still unstable.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of in and out for your voice.
Oh, really? Okay, maybe. Let me move around then.
All right.
Then
That's okay, Professor.
I hope it helps then. Just in Malaysia now. So that may affect the line then. If I'm breaking up or if it's not clear, can you just stop me so I can repeat again?
Oh,
Thanks,
all right.
Anissa. All right, thank
All right.
you. Okay.
Sure, Professor. You may continue whenever you are ready, Professor.
Yes. So let's go back to the basics. What corporate governance means. In simple term, it's just a system of control. It is one of the most critical component to ensure that the company is performing well to achieve its business objective and to ensure it can performance. It also deals with the relationship between the companies with the stakeholders and the importance of companies to abide or comply with law, policies, and procedures that govern the companies. So I mentioned this, it's just a system check and balance. Somebody is checking, like for example, the board of directors is then checking that the management is doing the right things for the shareholders as well as other stakeholders, so that all parties' interests can be protected. And of course, I think one of the most important thing is that to ensure that ethical standard. So ethical consideration not only embedded into how business decision, then not harming the environment, but also the importance of practices of companies to ensure, for example, equality and equity and give fair treatment to all employees, for example. Balancing, of course, first the need or expectation of the shareholders. We need to meet the expectation of the shareholders because they are the owner. They invested so much money in the companies, but also not neglecting other key parties like the stakeholders or customers, employees, investors, the government. The OECD definition of corporate governance is one of the most used definition of governance by those in practice when they come up with practices of governance in the companies. Again, it deals with right and responsibilities. What are
Pak Ujang di situ Pak, di 27. Ya, pakai Citylink.
Pesawat nggak ada ya?
Enggak, ini juga Citylink.
am I breaking then?
No, so sorry, Professor. There's someone who unmute their
Okay, all right.
microphone, so
Okay, all right.
Right.
So go back to the definition of OECD, or Organization for Economic Cooperation and Developments. It elements of right and in the corporations, the importance role of the boards, what are the rights and what are responsibility of the board as a proxy of or voice for the shareholders, managers, or the top management that responsible with resources that we entrusted to them as to run the business. Holders, for example, society as a whole. So it's then give sort of direction and tune of how companies should behaving or behavior of the companies when they are running the business. So the framework that been I mean the definition is to set up clear descriptions about objective of the companies within the governance framework and how they monitor it. I think one of the most important things that perhaps we also need to highlight within the governance practices is that on the aspect of ethical business conduct. Example, if we corporate failures that happen around the globe, most of the board of directors, for example, in terms of their characteristic, it ticks all the boxes. But again, one of the fundamental concepts or issues or problems that contribute to the government high ethical business conducts that lead to the corporate failures. So it is then important to embed aspect of ethical business conduct, especially within the management as well as the board and other governance mechanism to ensure that they are accountable, ensure that whatever decision that they are making not then detrimental to the other stakeholders as well as the environment. Now let's I just want to share with you a series of corporate collapses, and we can make some sort of reflections how it then influence our focus and attention when we perform our research. So since corporate failures, I'm just picking up some of the most prominent ones, perhaps most in the Western country, but again, in my own country, for example, the most recent ones, which and it is still ongoing, which is also contributed by poor governance mechanism within 1MDB. So for example, for Bank of Credit and Commercial International, BCCI, it was in 1991. Collapse of the companies was due to fraud, and of course contribute, which the bank then involved in money laundering and other illegal activities that then caused losses of billions to the companies. In the next couple of years, again in the UK, Barings Bank was the oldest bank in the UK, and the bank collapsed. Single trader, Nick Leeson. Key factors that contribute to the failures was ineffectiveness or weak internal control system, which then highlighted lack of oversight functions that lead to the financial losses and the bankruptcies. Moving forward, we have Enron. This is one of the most key. For example, like myself, accounting lecturers use it very widely when we want to explain, how governance mechanism fail that leads to the collapse of Enron, for example. Of course, no doubt, it is one of the most in the corporate. This was caused by falsification of financial statements by the management. It's highlighted issue of fraudulent financial reporting, conflict of interest, and of course governance failures. And I think from Enron we learned that how, for example, it was at the external auditors of Enron colluded with the management to falsify the financial statement. In addition, the board of directors also failed to perform adequate oversight functions that lead to the failure. So in Enron, failure of both as well as external governance mechanism that led to the collapse of the corporation. But it also do have social implication, of which, for example, employees losing their job and employees using their pension fund, for example. So moving forward, again, world.com again was committed by Arthur Andersen, and we can see that we don't longer have Arthur Andersen, and they need to close their business potentially. During that time, Arthur Andersen was the biggest accounting firms in the world. So world.com filed for bankruptcies because they inflated their asset by about 11 billion due to improper accounting practices. Again, as I mentioned, leading to one of the largest corporate accounting scandal in history, committed by Arthur Andersen as well. Moving forward, much closer in Japan, we have Olympus Corporations. Again, involved in 1.7 billion accounts that allow fraud to go undetected for years. So this may highlight then about the importance role of the internal audit functions that looking at the governance, internal controls, and compliance aspect of the companies. In 2015, we have all software in diesel engine to cheat emission tests. So this then again highlight weak governance as well as ethical oversight that lead to fines and reputations damage to the companies. In the UK, Carillion in 2018, again aggressive account stability in terms of financial performance of these UK construction companies. In German, in 2020, we have collapse of these companies again due to weak oversight and collusion with auditors. Again, highlight how we entrusted fail to then perform their function effectively. Greensill, a supply chain finance companies, which this company based in the Australia and in the UK, due to again a lack of regulatory governance practices lead to the failures of these companies. Morrison, Evergrande in China, for example, facing liquidity issues, crisis due to excessive borrowing and poor risk management. Again, it then highlights in may threaten financial stability in the whole market. Yeah. So what we can learn from this all corporate collapses, So what we can learn from all of these corporate collapses, we learned that potentially governance practices is very much important. The system of the company is then performing well. So, for example, yeah, when we do research, when we choose the topics, number one, there should be an issues in practice of which we would like to address. And normally when we read through studies in, especially in the introduction section, it will then talk about first how corporate scandals highlighted something is not. For example, yeah, when we read through the introduction section of business of most of the authors going to highlight about issues of weak corporate governance practices by citing a numbers of corporate collapses, so that we are interested to study this topic because we would like to know what's going on in practice. We would like to then understand more. For example, board of directors is important. We would like to know, what's the attributes of the board of directors that potentially can contribute to its effectiveness. So there are a numbers of key research teams in corporate governance that try to understand what's going on in practice, what factors that may and how our research then that can contribute to the debate or discussion in terms of practices of corporate governance by companies. Now, if we look at the key research teams in corporate governance, of course, the idea of us having corporate governance is that to ensure that the companies are performing well. So the internal governance mechanism that include board of directors together with its sub-board like risk committees, audit committees, as well as the effects of internal audit functions on the firm performance, normally on financial performance. And of course, agency theory is one of theory as to explain this study. People look at whether, for example, the board size, the board compositions, diversity in the board, frequency of meeting, for example, can affect effectiveness and subsequently affects the financial performance of the companies. Past research also try to look at the and try to understand different ownership structures like family and institutional ownerships, the impacts, for example, to the financial performance of the companies or risk management of the companies. And in general, past research documented the effects of each governance, corporate governance mechanism characteristics on financial performance of companies. Yeah. The next one is that looking again at board of directors role and composition or characteristic. Now beyond financial, I think they are to look at the effects of governance mechanism beyond financial, that's include value creation or corporate brand or image. So that's another key themes in corporate governance research. Currently, perhaps the concentration or the focus But before this, there are lots of study that examined again the role of corporate governance in promoting corporate social responsibilities. I think the CSR and ESG, SDG, as well as sustainability very much interconnected or overlap with one another. I think most of the research, which I'm going to discuss a bit more after this, looking of disclosure related to ESG or transparency as well as sustainability reporting. That's another key research themes. There are a numbers looking at there are numbers of study that looking at emerging market within governance practices within the emerging market context, of which of course due to the mixed finding, it may be due to the regional factors and regulatory environment of the study that may then give effect to the mixed findings, because perhaps study in Indonesia or Malaysia may in the UK due to these regional factors as well as regional factors. And currently we are then in IR 4.0 and moving towards IR 5.0. And again, as I mentioned earlier, let's try to understand the effects of digitalization as well being affected by digitalization, which I'm going to discuss a bit more after this. So, there are numbers of other research teams within the corporate governance. I'm just highlighting a few of it. But in general, I would say that we would like to know understand attributes of different board of directors, whether audit committee characteristic, for example, give effects to the quality of financial reporting as well. And they are study that looking at the interaction effects of all governance mechanism, internal and external, and how it affects the financial performance of maybe different with other types of companies, especially the government-owned, we call it as government-linked company within the Malaysian setting, for example, or SOE, state-owned enterprise. So that's again that's again then contribute companies. All right. So overall, those are the key research teams in corporate governance. So I will then move forward to discuss at least 4 current related to corporate governance that include risk management, ESG, digitalization and governance, as well as fraud and governance. Again, risk management is not really new. If again we track back governance developments of corporate governance, perhaps for so many years now. And let's try to understand what do we know about research related to corporate governance and risk management. Now, from the review, for example, number 1, ownership structures. For example, how ownership concentration such as family or institutional ownership may give effects to risk management practices of company. Findings always or institutional investors play a very significant role in monitoring and mitigating risk. However, family ownerships can both lower or increase risk depending on the company and the market. We are trying to understand governance practices of companies. We are trying to understand whether governance structure may have any effects to how companies managing their risks of companies. So the past research highlighted that effects in terms of how risk management been set up in the companies. So there's a difference between family as well as institutional ownership and how that can give effects to the corporate risk management of companies. Then they are the main board that overseeing all aspects related to the companies that include the risk management, because companies that been facing with internal and external factors that may hinder them from, so they need to modify their risk appetite rate, whether it's low, medium, and high, and what would be the mitigating factors or their plan when things happen. So based on the past research, it shows that the board composition, especially independence members, can on risk management practices. Research documented that, for example, independent as well as diverse board, they are more likely to be linked to better oversight, which then lower risk, especially within the context the control within the companies. I think one of the most interesting things that we need to appreciate in terms of the board composition is that in terms of the diversity and expertise. So companies need to ensure that they bring along not only members with adequate experience or skills and knowledge, but it need to be from a different background as well. As well as diversity in terms of gender, diversity in terms of the because when you bring different people from different background, different people will then bring different perspective and opinion, which is good for the discussion, which then lead to a better oversight. So this is where it can lower the risk, especially if then example, so you need to background, I don't know, medical background, various background in the board, especially if you are big conglomerate companies that then dealing with different industry, that would be good as well. Again, what do we know about corporate governance and risk management? It tells us that the executive is important and that perhaps at the end of the day that make all the final decision related to the companies. Now, CEO duality, if the same individual also possessing the executive positions, it may then influence the risk behavior of the management. So research shows that powerful executive can either based on the composition structure and corporate governance quality. Now, I think another important things that we need to look at is related to the compensation package, remuneration package of the executive. That's important as well. I think that is remuneration package or compensation package is important because number one, for example, especially the role of the nomination, remuneration and nomination committee, they need to ensure that they can attract the best people to be on board in the companies, and at the same time, they need to be active, attract the best people in the company. So that would potentially can give effects to the risk-taking behavior of the executive. So executive, especially the top management, would be the one that have the final say is how they are going to deal with risk management. So if we are not offering attractive package or incentive to them, so more likely, their effort related to risk management, executive power incentive is important as well. It influence the behavior of the individual related to risk management. And of course, another important governance mechanism related to risk management, depending on the structure of the companies, sometimes they do have risk management from internal audit functions, or sometimes the role or function being delegated to the internal audit function. And we know that the internal audit function work closely with the audit committee in the areas of internal control as well as the scope of function being set up in the company. Yeah. Can you hear me well then? Guys, can you hear me well?
Yes, Professor.
Yes.
Yes, there's someone
Okay.
unmuting their microphone, just like before. So please continue, Professor. Sorry for the interruption.
I just want to. So audit committees do have the importance of the audit committee, especially the chairman, to possess accounting or finance knowledge is important. They are working closely with the internal audit function. One of the areas that they're looking at perhaps on the risk aspect will be the one that the work of the internal audit function. They are the one that perhaps ensuring that the internal audit function do have sufficient budget, for example, or the right staff to perform the risk management work. So if we as a companies do have effective audit committee, it likely to reduce, improve quality of risk management system as well, because past research documented that again, effective audit committee will lead to high financial reporting quality. Effective audit committee then will lead to better risk audit internal audit function to support the role of the main board or board of directors in discharging the aspect of financial reporting as well as risk management. And of course, board of directors cannot do their they need their sub board to support their roles and function. single areas like committee that then support the role of the main board. The other thing is the integration again, risk management with CSR as well as ESG. So within the governance framework, it's potentially helps in reducing some of you may have heard Malaysian company which has operation in Indonesia, Samdabi. They have a numbers of acres of plantations, palm oil, palm. You know, they produce palm oil, and they have location in Indonesia. And in the past years, for example, some Dhabi products been banned by European Union, yeah, due to the claim that they are not then practicing green. Remember, sekarang tak ada cause of the open burning that's happened in Indonesia, right? So, for example, EU prohibit, ban their products, palm oil from distributed in EU region due to their operation not practicing green and involved in this open burning in Indonesia. So that's lead to a reputational and potentially litigation risk, especially reputational risk for big companies like Samdabi. Yeah? So governance is important then to overseeing that aspect, how we are going to then reputational risk, because especially financial performance of the companies. So if we flip through the Samdabi annual report, you know, they have a very good close disclosure, detailed disclosure about their CSR, corporate social responsibilities practices, how ESG being integrated in part of their business practices, not committed in the ways to clean the land areas and to replant the palm tree, for example. So aspect of risk go beyond just the financial risk. It also deals with reputational and litigation. And perhaps the last part is on national policies and investors protection. It then discusses about the impact of investment standard. Jurisdiction would have different national policies and investors protection. So again, this is one of the way for companies to attract potential investors or to retain current investors. So this is part of ways of companies managing of their current stakeholders. Those are some of the key sub-themes that we may then learn from past research related to corporate governance and risk management. And in the third part of my discussion, I will then highlight about potentially could give us some indication of areas of future research that we can embark into. So that's on theme 1. And now I move to theme 2, which is on corporate governance and ESG. Now, there are various have conducted related to the topics of corporate governance and ESG, as well as sustainability. So one of the key areas is then responsible investment. Nowadays, companies then include in the ESG factors in the investment decision, or investors include ESG factors in investment decision. The other themes or subtopic that related to the reporting. The question is how corporate governance that then contribute to a greater disclosure of ESG, and then the question is how corporate governance then lead by companies. So transparency in terms of ESG practices of the companies, as well as the integration between financial and non-financial information. And nowadays we also have the integrated reporting is not something new, but and it tried to then, of course, enhance transparency related to companies' business practices. So whether certain characteristic of the corporate governance then lead to greater disclosure, greater transparency related to ESG practices, as well as the motivation of the companies to integrate the reporting or embark into integrated reporting. Because we need to bear in mind that all of this disclosure involve cost for the company. And the question as to whether we really need all of this information to be what do we know about it from the past literature? Do like investors really concerned about is ESG practices, disclosure related to non-financial information? Then so it's then try to investigate the relationship between firm ESG performance and financial performance of firm value. Again, this is the point that I already mentioned when I discussed about the overall key themes about corporate governance research. In general, the effects of governance on firm performance or firm value, for example, value creation and so on. The other thing is that to look at whether companies that engage in ESG, economic, social, and governance, really enhance the firm value based on the past research. I think a mixed findings related to. It doesn't mean that companies that disclose more on ESG then lead to better performance. They may attract investors that were concerned about the environment or social contribution of the companies. But again, perhaps research the causal relationship between ESG practices and company performance. And of course, I already mentioned about corporate governance and ESG performance. Most research documented that certain attributes of the corporate governance do have effects to more diverse the board. They are putting effort to ensure that the management link or the business strategy of the companies contribute to the achievement of economic, social, and meaning to say companies do have a positive impact to the economic and social company performance. Again, to reiterate some of the points, board gender diversities is one of the prominent factors that shows there is a positive relationship between, for example, gender diversity as well as ESG performance. If board of directors members more independence and they have good size, and if they have a good size of the board, more likely it will be better ESG disclosure. For CEO duality, also sit in the board tougher in case of the CEO not inclined to focus on ESG, but more on the bottom line figure of the company or profit of the company or the accounting figure. And the need for the companies to upskills these and more likely they know what ESG is all about, and the importance of company to tailor their practices towards achievement of the ESG, or currently we are also talking about SDG, Social Development Goal, of which is overlapped with concept of economic, social and governance. Past research also documented that firms that are cross-listed in multiple countries tend to have superior ESG disclosure. This is partly due to the facts that increased regulatory requirement and stakeholder expectation may, because of the international standard, and because of that, firms which are cross-listed in multiple countries tend to have superior ESG disclosure simply because of the requirement of different jurisdictions or increased regulatory requirements. I think what is important that perhaps we would like to ask ourselves is that the actual implementation or practices of companies, whether it's really lead to ESG, of which I'm going to discuss a bit more in the third part of the sharing session. And sustainability, research shows that if companies do have a very clear vision, mission, strategy, objective, they're more likely to integrate the company's governance practices with sustainability. So meaning to say, if the companies do have element in the mission, vision and strategy objective, more likely they will then able to integrate well those in the corporate governance framework, and then being translated into the corporate board. But diversity and attitude of the CEO play a very significant role in promoting sustainability as well as ESG. Again, sustainability, ESG, SDG very much overlap with one another in terms of its element. and greater transparency and continuous engagement with stakeholder also reflects transparency in governance communication and stakeholders that able to build trust and enhance accountability of governance mechanism within the companies like the management as well as the board. So if there is any continuous engagement with the stakeholders, it bridge the management, the companies with the public, and you as a management, for example, going to revisit and look and reflect back your practices then. So stakeholder system model, meaning to say what's the governance structure like? Is it prioritized against stakeholders or only shareholders? As we already discussed about in the early development of corporate governance, very much inward focus or orientation. Now it's very much outward focus as well. So the system itself then influence the achievement of ESG or sustainability goals of the companies. Yeah. Social responsibility program. Study shows that companies that engage extensively in CSR potentially gain more trust from the stakeholders and more likely to non-financially. That's include the image, performance, or corporate brand of the company. And then we move to the next themes related to the corporate governance with digitalization. The question is how corporate governance and practices thereby perhaps able the company to sustain its operations as well as help them in making better decision making. So there are several corporate how company leverage its technology for ESG advancement within the governance framework. Number one, again, board structure and accountability of each party, especially the internal governance mechanism, would then influence action define board structures is important to overseeing the implementation of advanced technology to ensure alignment with ESG goal. For example, real-time data reporting tools, data analytics that very keen on embarking into digitalization in the business operation. If you are then having support from the board structure, from the board members, then more likely it will support the implementation of technology in the companies. Yeah. Of course, we can agree that things to all companies, but again, especially the role of the board is important as to encourage or discourage the use of technology in the companies. Number two is on transparency and compliance mechanism. Corporate governance, and every company do have a framework of governance processes of the companies, overseen by the internal governance mechanism, including the board as well as the management. So governance framework that prioritize transparency and ethical standard is important for effective ESG. Now we are talking about the automation within the company's business processes, blockchain in accounting reporting, or the use of artificial intelligence to facilitate compliance with relevant. Again, part of the risk management to minimize non-compliant risk, as well as promoting responsible governance. So the extent of which transparency and compliant mechanism being established within the company is important. Again, is go back to the attitude of the management on digitalization and the important. Now, we did talk about stakeholder engagement, continuous engagement between companies and its stakeholders. Whether the companies or the governance structures have an active engagement platform with the use of Industry 4.0 tools that can support practices with stakeholder expectations. The next one is on risk management and cybersecurity, which I'm going to discuss a bit more after this. Again, risk management is not something new, but we need to admit that risk always been there, been facing, that cannot go away. For example, COVID-19 is part of the risk that need to be managed by the companies and how it affect the business operations. For example, geopolitical tension currently happening again may affect some of the industries. So how are you going to manage that as well? Recent and how it can affect companies that have businesses or dealing with the US market. So that's then create risks that need to be managed by the companies. So risk management is something that going to be there, like whatever that need to be managed. Perhaps in the use of data analytics or big data within companies by the risk management committee or internal audit functions, and how companies should embark and use data analytics within the internal audit function. That's important, for example, to support role of the internal audit function in the governance framework. I did do some research related to internal audit function and audit data analytic tools. Try to understand how, for example, the data analytic can support the role of internal audit function in discharging their governance function, as well ESG part, economic social governance, and that was in Malaysian setting, and the study documented mixed findings actually. And now companies, we are talking about digitalization. All business, most or majority of business practices operation very much using embark into information system. So because of that, cybersecurity issues is of concern, which I'm going to discuss a bit more after this. But again, the question as how governance need to be well established in order to protect, for example, issue of data breaches or compliance with privacy law, and strengthening. The last point is on executive leaderships and ethical oversight. For example, ethical leadership and oversight, we are moving toward 5.0. Now we are currently at Industry 4.0. What are the necessary tools to prevent fraud and to ensure ethical use of artificial intelligence within the companies. Yeah? I think in terms of research, this is very much new. There are lots of opportunity that we can then embark related to this aspect. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to be quick because we already like 3:30 now. So what is artificial intelligence? So it is a computer system native ability undertaking tasks typically requiring human intelligence. 4.0 very much focus on automation of processes moving forward. Industry Revolution 5.0 perhaps we are moving toward more of aspect of artificial intelligence. Support sustainable development goal by leveraging technology such as machine learning, big data, and automation. So for companies, for example, they can use artificial intelligence in various aspects. For example, number one, environmental monitoring and management. It then can help plantation companies to use certain tools, times, emissions. We can identify and mitigate environmental impact promptly. Again, this is something new. I was watching a television last time, looking at one of particular plantation industries use this kind of technology in the production process of the companies, because they want to reduce the carbon emission. You know, nowadays companies then embark into use of AI to monitor the performance of the companies, because in Malaysia, for example, they do have government give an incentive for companies that embark into this green innovation and green things. Risk assessment and compliance, AL tools perhaps used by the internal audit function to better identify and rate risk. So allow compliance with regulation. And within the corporate governance, this is also one of the areas that I'm working right now, looking at the effects of good governance on financial and non-financial performance, and what is moderated by fraud prevention initiative, especially within companies as well as the so how corporate governance. I would say that based on my reading, and enhancement of internal control through use of AI, again in monitoring risk and to automate certain routine processes to identify anomalies in the financial or non-financial data. It's improve information transparency by providing real-time. So you have one hub of big data that you can do some sort of analysis and analytic and get some informed conclusion from it. Governance of AI is important. There are a number of studies that looking at the governance of information technology. Again, use of AI to comply with data privacy and algorithm fairness, how they use our data at the end of the day. We don't want them to misuse it, and of course in supporting the risk management, of which I already explained earlier. Cybersecurity in accounting research, for example, what cybersecurity is, it means that the technology, processes and control design to protect the system, network and data from cyber attack. Cybersecurity encompasses the protection of cyberspace, user operating within it, digital asset that may be accessed or affected via cyberspace, and their confidentiality, availability, and integrity of the data that been used in the process. How then governance can influence cybersecurity? Number one, board level involvement. Again, governance structure is important, because if you have a set of board of directors that very much the aspect of as well as cybersecurities, meaning to say they are more likely better in preparing the companies for issue of cybersecurity. So board level engagement, board level involvement is important. That can give effects to the amount of investment, the attitudes of the management on internal control and function as part of the governance mechanism that can overseeing the cybersecurity issue by reviewing the securities policies and compliance of different party within the organization. Disclosure practices, for example, in the US, Sarbanes-Oxley Act emphasize companies to disclose information related to the aspect of cybersecurity that then perhaps ESG that's also include cybersecurity effort, cybersecurity investment. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, if the management as well the board think this is one of their priority, given we are in the era of digitalization, therefore they are going to set up or set aside some budget and look at the strategic priorities related to cybersecurity investment. And normally the cost is not cheap. So it is a matter of optimizing optimal investment on potential cyber risk, which can lead to involve financial costs. As I mentioned, it's not cheap. Governance and fraud, another aspect that perhaps require attention from us, because fraudulent financial reporting is a never-ending story. So let's try to understand the topic more when we are talking about fraud, ranging from corporate fraud, insider fraud, and asset diversion in general, as well as organization that affect the stakeholders and give damage to the corporate governance integrity. Yeah? So conceptually, fraud can be defined as financial deceit or ethical lapse that can give detrimental effects to the stakeholder. To really look on this issue of fraud. Yeah. So again, in general, companies to uphold ethical standard, ethical attitudes in the companies that then would able to reduce fraud, and the importance of board characteristic composition as well. Also looking at the fraud aspect, and of course expertise, diversities, give different view, may helps companies to discuss more about the aspect of fraud mitigation and detections or mitigating. So the more diverse, the more independence, more likely they are more likely to be more effective and more engaging on fraud prevention effort. And of course, ownership structure, accountability, and internal control, all of this may give effects to the prevention and detection effort of companies related. Be quite if it's the top management that engage in the fraudulent financial reporting, especially, for example, in the case of Enron. And of course, company may set the internal control, but they also may override it. So that is where the role of the board of directors is important to avoid challenges in corporate. I will try very quickly to finish it off for Q&A session. My apology, it's already like 3:30 now. I think one of the things that perhaps require more work, okay, we documented certain attributes of the governance lead to better or greater disclosure on ESG, but then they are study that look at the aspect of greenwashing and transparency. For legitimacy purposes, just publish everything and claim that, they are committed with ESG. But then, for example, Apple Corporation, and then there are some other companies then been claim not really, socially responsible. For example, they're engaged in things that perhaps not towards the achievement of protecting the environment or fair and equitable work opportunities, for example. So there is aspect. So it means that, they just put things up there, but in practice it's not really happening. So that's one of the challenges. So there is a call for assurance for non-financial information. Should, like, financial statement be independently assured to ensure that the information is reliable, because it can give effects to the investors that are relying on the non-financial information to make an investment decision, because now potentially investors concerned about green environment, so they are looking for green investment, for example, but we don't reporting like accounting standard. Perhaps we have accounting standard that very much standardized in terms how companies report their financial statement, financial information, but not for perhaps non-financial information. So one companies may then report in this way, the other companies perhaps report in the other way. So there is no lack standardization, low or high quality of the disclosure. So that's another areas that we need to look at. In terms of the quality of disclosure, because of the lack of standardization of in terms of the framework that govern the non-financial reporting. Yeah? So it may then hinder or reduce the comparability between companies, as well as reliability of the ESG data when you make decision making on the companies. Aspect of digitalization and governance, more study than perhaps needed on the issue of data privacy and securities. So we would like to know how things been done in practice. For example, how then governance practices within the companies been fit in within the information technology or data governance of the companies. Oversight of digital transformation, board are responsible to ensure digital initiative align with the long-term objective. But would that be the case then? Perhaps you can perform study that look at certain characteristic of the board and the efforts of the companies related to digitalization. But the extent how it been done in practice, then that's another things that require attention by us, the researcher. Issue of cyber threat, how cyber threats been fit within this governance framework, as well as risk management framework of the companies. Potentially give us a better idea how then this been done in practice, and the use of AI as well as ethical, and reduce bias and ensure fairness in terms of the use of AI within companies. If AI being used in the companies, what aspect of governance practices that it been used, how AI potentially help the board of directors members to perform their oversight function. So that's another areas of research that we can look at. I already mentioned about risk management and governance, identification of risk, use of AI, how digitalization can then expose us the business additional risks that need to be monitored by the, for example, so companies, crisis management and business continuity, things like pandemic, things like geopolitical factors, war, for example, need companies or board to ensure that they have a robust crisis system to ensure that the business continuity can continue in supply chain disruptions. Cyber incident need to be looked at by the corporations. And the last one is on internal control, fraud detection, fraud prevention and detection. Again, as I mentioned, I am working on a topic on fraud and governance as well. We would like to practices that may influence prevention effort in terms of the fraud. So moving forward, digital fraud risks are rising because we are embarked into digitalization. Online transaction data breaches, how governance within companies able to establish good control to ensure it can be minimized. Financial reporting accuracy. What can we do in order to prevent manipulation of financial misstatement? How the use of digitalization, automation, AI, analytics able to enhance financial reporting accuracy, for example. And the last one is on supply chain and procurement fraud. This is perhaps one of the areas that been looked at by companies. On the supply chain, again with digitalization, blockchain and AI technologies may help to enhance traceability of transaction and reduce the fraud risk. So overall, I just give a brief conclusion. We can see that since it's established, the comments or research that been done in the past years, and we can see that currently when we are discussing about corporate governance as part of digitalization as well as ESG is are some of the prominent topics that currently being researched by especially academic research. Give us an opportunity to embark into research to understand more about how current digitalization or ESG shape governance practices of companies. So by that, I end the session. Now let's open for the Q&A session, and I'm sorry to take some.
All right, that's fine, Professor. It's a very insightful presentation from you. So thank you so much, Professor Adwa, for the insightful presentation once again. So we learned some of the things like the CG or corporate governance definition, also the historical and the current development, also some of the key themes or topic for the research themes nowadays. And also I would like to apologize for the audiences if there is any interference that was occurred during the session. So after this, everyone, I believe you all already have a question that you would like to ask to Professor Adwa. But before that, I would like to invite the representative from the ESGI Dataset today, who is Ms. Neni, to give a very brief presentation or introduction of ESGI Dataset. So Ms. Neni, I believe you have been joining us already. All right, so please welcome Ms. Neni. The time is yours.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
works perfectly. All right.
thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. First, thank you for Miss Anisha, and thank you for Miss Noor Adwa for the lightning presentation. Okay, let me introduce myself. My name is Neni. I'm a business development team of ESGI Dataset. Today, I will introduce you how easily to get the data for your research. Okay, usually when we are conducting research with variables that source from common reports, you will need to collect the data by opening each report individually, extracting the relevant information, and input it into Excel. So what if your research involves numerous companies over several years? This process will become extremely time-consuming. So to solve this problem, we introduce the ESGI dataset. Wait a minute, I will share screen. Okay. Okay, now you can see website ESGI Dataset on your dashboard. Okay, ESGI Dataset is a platform that provides a comprehensive database from of community reports. They include annual and sustainability reports that source from company listed on Indonesian, Malaysian, and Singapore stock exchange. And the data is present in a clean tabulated format and ready to be imported into data processing application such as SATA, SPSS, or Extracta that enabling you to access it easily, quickly, and also legally. So to access, you can visit our website www.sg.ai, and after that you can sign in or sign up. To simply register, you can use general email or email domain campus. After you register, you activation, and you can log in. So after login, you will be direct to this page. Okay, this is our two key features: text analytics and quantitative data. Text analytics is used to search specific keywords on company reports, and quantitative data is used to allows you to obtain the data that you need. So by scrolling down, you will see a few data catalog features, and you can click. Okay, this page you can explore our variables that we provide: variable or name, definition and measurement, price, year coverage, and also availability status. If you have done identified your variable or your data, and you can adjusting definition and measurement, you can scrolling up and click get your data. Okay, you can click by data set. Okay, this is our main page to get the data that we need. So to purchase, you should input the variables or data that you need, select the country, industries, companies, and also years. For example, you need a variable ROA. You can search ROA and checklist the variable and the country from Indonesian, industry for example, sector for example, you need energy and basic materials. Okay, you can checklist, and years from 3 years later, 2020, 21, and 22, you can checklist and also add variable. Okay, before that you can select show result preview, and this is data that you will get. This is contain ticker or company code, company name, year, IDX sector, IDX subsector, and also variable that you will buy. After that, you can check out, you can buy one variables. You can review the invoice first, and you also enjoy a 50% discount by input the code ESGRL1. Okay, you can apply, ESGRL5, you can also apply. You can select the payment method, and also you can payment. After you have done or successfully payment, the data will appear on your dashboard that you download for easily gitu. After that, after you download your data, If you have some technical issues like the variables or data that you need not available or technical problems, or you discuss first about your data, you can click icon hotline and you can click icon WhatsApp. So you can feel free discuss us via WhatsApp for variables that you need or technical problems. Well, that's all from me for introduce ESGI Dataset, where you can get data quickly, easily, and of course legally. That's all from me. Thank you for your attention, and I return it to Miss Anissa. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Miss Annie, for the brief introduction of ESGI Dataset. As what we heard from Miss Annie, that ESGI Dataset can provide us with a ranging of data from the corporate governance, also finance, also the company structure across Asia, and also from the top companies worldwide. So of course, later on, that conducting the data collection will never be a problem because you can get a data just in a blink of an eye. So, all right, everyone, we'll now move to the next session, which is the Q&A section. So if you have any questions, I wish to raise your hand directly, and I will let you to open your mic to deliver your question right away. All right, so we are about to start now. All right, if there's anyone who wish to ask to Professor Adwa, please raise your hand.
Sorry, I cannot turn on my camera because some reason.
Yes, sure.
Can I continue to ask a few questions to Madam Professor?
Sure, sir, please.
Yeah, good afternoon, Ibu Noor Adwa. Assalamualaikum, Bu.
Waalaikumsalam.
I have a few questions regarding to your topic, especially about ESG. The first question I would like to ask is about in Indonesians nowadays, the situations in Indonesians nowadays. A poor governance often occur in a state-owned enterprise, usually owned by the government. Okay, especially in Indonesia, due to the conflict of interest, especially interest of the politician, the politician and the government authority. As the result, a state-owned enterprise, we call SOE, frequently become a source of exploitation from the politician and the party with near of to the government, from board director to commissioner of the firm. Many SOE leader attempt or try to drain the company resource, causing significant loss for the main stakeholder, especially investor. For instance, the Garuda Indonesia experienced a drastic drop in stock price and was even suspended after the president director was involved in the corruption scandal, corruption scandal involving a financial statement manipulation, like window dressing practice or even financial fraud. Other example, Jiwasraya, which suffer loss amounts about 27 trillion rupiah due to similar misconduct. Additional PT Timah, PT Timah operation lead to environmental degradation from reckless mining activity and collaborating with the illegal miner. Other example, government-owned infrastructure company has been involved in corruption scandal. For example, PT Adikarya and PT Wijaya Karya and Waskita Karya, which manage marking up the project cost of the toll, resulting in trillion rupiah in loss to a state finance. What's your solution could help minimize this detrimental action in the company largely owned by the government. Can I continue to the second question, Madam Professor?
Can I answer your first question first?
Okay, but the second question also the crucial question.
Yeah, yeah.
May I?
I'm afraid that I will like forget your question. Let me answer your first question and then we
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Professor.
Yeah, I think it's quite similar to what's happening in Malaysia in terms of how SOE, or we call it in Malaysia government link company, uh, engage in various fraudulent activities that then cause losses to the companies. Now in Malaysia with the new government, for example, I was commented in a newspaper column about starting next year, all of the government linked company or SOE companies in Malaysia need to be audited by the auditors from the government. We call it as Jabatan Audit Negara, because last time we don't have an independent verification on SOE. If it's a big GLC, big SOE listed in companies, of course you have external auditors that like KPMG, Deloitte, that audit the companies. So moving forward, I think the efforts of the government is important. Number one, we can introduce additional oversight functions like independent audit to audit the SOE. And number two, for example, in Malaysia, the recent revision of the Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance, it specified that, for example, within the structure of the board members, the chairman should not be appointed from active politician. I don't know the structure in Indonesia, for example, but the codification of the standard in Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance, for example, the recent revision, it spelled clearly that politician cannot be part of the members, jadi chairman ke, jadi member of the board of the directors because of the conflict of interest, isn't it? That's another things that can be done. I think what is important, because it is the government policies and processes that at the end of the day that set the tone in the SOE. So additional oversight functions need to be introduced, or strengthening the existing function, meaning to say they need to appoint and select the best people that perform the governance function. So any conflict of interest, tak boleh sedara dengan orang ni, tak boleh someone that ada related business relationship, personal relationships. So I think that's need to be ironed out in terms of the criterias of the board members. That's important because that's the first defense of governance, even though it's SOE, whether listed or non-listed. So governance mechanism should be there lah, should be implemented. And if the government can issue a clear codification code of governance practices for SOE, that's what we are doing now. Because, for example, in Malaysia, we are now undergoing numbers of reform by the new Prime Minister, because they want, his idea is that to clean up lah all the kitirisan leakages dalam government agency, especially the SOE, because SOE, they are using our money, the public money. So that's the efforts lah. So my answer going to be the need to strengthening the governance mechanism within the SOE. We need to iron up there is a clear guideline codification of best practices for the SOE. Lantikan appointment of board of directors or any key parties, key members in the company should not be someone related personally, business relationship ke personal relationship, to make sure that they are independent and they are then using the resources effectively lah, resources that we give them to manage the business, all the resources being used and to reduce leakages lah. So that's answer for your first question. And your second question is?
Okay, the second question is the massive expansion of the palm oil that you tell before that expansion of the palm oil plantation has led to a drastically reduction in a tropic rainforest. You know, the deforestation pose multiple threat, lead to endangered protected wildlife population, extinct some kind of animal population, contribute to climate change by raising the global temperature, displace indigenous communities, and allow a small group of elite to control economic resources, thereby exacerbating social and economic inequality. Okay, how can we ensure our to maintain the surrounding, especially the sorry, the environmental for the next generation.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with you about how the business expansion, for example, use of land untuk plantation, for plantation may have detrimental effects for the environment. But at the same time, it is the roles of the board and the management to think about how their practices then may have minimal impact lah to the environment. We agree that, okay, companies will argue that, the business expansion not only giving, for example, peluang pekerjaan, job opportunity, which have, they argue, perhaps ada social impact for the society by giving peluang pekerjaan for them to better off in their life. But at the same time, they need to embark into macam I cakap tadi lah, mungkin use of AI, tengok, the extent of damages and what the counter effort that they can do untuk minimize the effects of their practices, guna more contemporary machine, yang advanced machine, yang not reduce too much carbon emission, go for green kind of practices that can again help to minimize effects to the environment, so tak perlu nak bakar the land area. So they need to embark, they need to invest R&D, perhaps look at the new technology, more green technology, because for me sometimes memang ada conflicts, on one hand, okay, we want to do business, of course the focus orientation going to be for profit maximization. But again, as we discussed earlier, the orientation should not just about profit making. Okay, what your practices can be beneficial to the society by giving greater access to opportunity, boleh bagi scholarship in terms of corporate social responsibility. And then they, of course, need to change their practices lah in terms of to minimize the impact, especially to the environment lah. So that's something that, again, the board of directors together with management need to think about. They need to then be ready to do things differently and to be more responsible to the party, whether the society ke environment that can be affected by their practices lah. I think that's some of the things that the companies can do. They doing that. For example, sekarang ni kalau kita pergi beli, Apple products pun, and then they claim that, now they are using for boxes from biodegradable punya sources, right? And then use plastic yang boleh recycle. So there are things that companies do to show that they are doing something for the environment lah. But more likely like, manufacturing firm or plantation companies, so their practices lagi big impact to the environment, for example. So they need to be innovative lah in their business practices, because I did a study that looking at, for example, the effects of governance characteristic on research green innovation, ya. Memang menunjukkan kalau more effective, stronger governance, more likely the companies akan more willing to invest in green innovation, in R&D that put forward green things. So dengan penggunaan, the use of solar system, that we are moving toward green now. So they need to think about how to innovate lah, using green resources, solar system, things like that, as to, for example, nak reduce dia punya carbon emission and things like that. Okay. I think that's my answer for your second question then.
Thank you, Madam Professor. And the last question, Madam Professor,
Yep.
do you have any tips how to our journal to accept in reputable reputable journal like Scopus? And then can you share your experience during the Scopus journal publication process?
Yeah.
Because it's very crucial for us as a researcher. Thank you very much, Madam Professor.
Yeah, sure. Let me share about my experience published in a AAAJ. It is an ISI journal. It took me nearly 2 years to publish. And I've got 3 reviewers that commented on the paper. And it's a long list of comments. Number 1, don't be put off by a long list of comments from the reviewer. They just want to help you out in terms of how to improve the paper. The things that I really learned from the AAAJ comments was the importance of to able to write clearly and to justify and argue your arguments, to support and to justify your argument well. That I think that's important. Yeah, that's I think two tips that we, all of us, including myself now, because sometimes I already also got desk rejection from the, for example, Q1 ISI journal because it's not easy. Again, number 1, don't be put off. So jangan putus semangat lah, when we receive, whether desk rejection or a long list of comments from the reviewer. So first day you dapat tu, you read it through and then you just keep it. Next day, then you go one by one and think about how to approach each comment, because sometimes there is a kind of conflict between reviewer 1 and reviewer 2 and reviewer 3, but you need to address all of the comment. And number 2, as I mentioned, it teach me the importance of to write things clearly and to justify well things that you do and why you're not doing it, or why you are saying certain things. It need to be well justified. Yeah. And of course, other than that, your work need to be within the scope of the journal. Same goes to Scopus journal, especially Q1 like Mandatory Accounting Journal, or Q2 like ARA, Asian Review of Accounting. Again, based on my experience, of course, number one, your topic need to be relevant to the journal. Topic that perhaps not much study on it that can add additional knowledge on the topic. Again, the comments. You need to be upfront to justify well why you're choosing this sample. What's to be the justification? Would that sample enough? So write clearly and justify well things in the paper.
Thank you very
Alright.
much, Madam Professor.
All right, so if I would like to add, so it's kind of still a challenge also in Indonesia to face the government effort, which is essential also for to support the corporate governance. Yeah, I think it's still like essential or crucial challenge that we are facing now in Indonesia. Also a part that we are now having a president and etc. So yeah. It's
Yeah.
something that we are still working on it. Also, I totally agree to your suggestion before, Professor, that the first one did not being put off from the reviewer comments, and sometimes from the two reviewers, they are giving us like the contradictive comment. The reviewer one said about a thing, and then the other reviewer said something that which is totally different from one to another. Yeah, so I totally agree to it. So we are now moving to the second question from Mr. Indra Repival Sembiring. Bapak, if you would like to please turn on your mic.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Very
Right.
good.
Thank you so much, Professor, for the time as written there. It was very inspiring on defining the overall ideas. I think it inspired us to pick up some of the topics that we can also adopt to a different subject of research. Yet I actually write my questions there. What will be the suggested methodology for this research, either quantitative and qualitative, and if there is example that can be taken from your previous experience, and what do you think will be other alternative advantage and disadvantage to be used to particularly research on the governance of the ESG practices? And maybe if I may extend the question, if there is some sort of tips on the data that is required for this, because we have understanding on the sustainability report as well as a source of data, and then a lot information that can be used there. But as you mentioned as well, that probably it can be a source of identifying whether it is towards greenwashing or maybe green hushing. They are not really disclose it that much. So how is your experience towards that? And if we can continue our research by analyzing their sustainability reports. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pak Indra, for your questions. Now, I think to answer your questions, based on my experience, number one is go back to what's the research question or research objective that you want to answer, isn't it? Most likely we're going to employ archival study or analysis of the annual report or using databases if we want to look at cause and effect relationship, looking at certain attributes of governance may give certain effects on the firm performance, for example. But perhaps within that focus or objective, archival or quantitative research going to be the most appropriate or suitable methods as to achieve the objective. Now, I think when I read through, especially Q1 ISI journals, it seems that now the trend is moving towards mixed method, which makes sense for me simply because, for example, based on archival research, it's well established certain characteristic of governance have a positive relationship to the financial performance of the companies, but yet corporate collapses happen. So it makes us wondering what is happening then in practice. While we documented that if the board having these types of attributes, meet frequently, diverse board, gender diversity experience, large board, adequate numbers of members. In terms of the composition, they've got independent members, majority of it, but yet corporate collapses happen. So it makes you wondering what is happening in practice. So if time permits, for example, I would then, especially for my PhD student, I would then encourage them to go for a mixed method. Okay, your quantitative work show this, but you would also like to know in practice what is happening. So you can conduct a series of interviews with board of directors, members, or audit committees, or the management, ask them about their perceptions on the ESG's governance practices of company. So it can really then answer or give you additional insight in terms of the actual practices, the dynamic, the power struggle of the members in the board meeting, for example, between interaction of the management and the management. So you potentially can capture it using qualitative works like interviews. So yeah, to answer your question, I would say that number one, it depends on the questions or objective that you want to answer. But beyond documenting associations, cause and effects relationship, I would also strongly advise, especially my student and myself as well, my research as well, and go for a mixed method approach, because the qualitative work can give additional insight that cannot be captured through more structured approach like quantitative approach. So yeah, am I answering your question, Pak Indra?
Yes, I think that answers. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Pak Indra and Professor Adwa, for the discussion about the mixed method to obtain the research. So back to the question. Yes, I think actually for myself, I have never conduct using the mixed method. So I think it's also interesting. Also from your previous presentation, Professor, about the use of AI, or that's kind of being a hot topic or trend nowadays. So just a very quick question for me, and also will be the last question. So is there any like specific variable names or measurement to talk about the AI, specific to talk about the AI in terms of corporate governance mechanism that you were talking before?
Now, based on my own reading or my research on data analytics, I would say, for example, AI is a very new topic, it's a very emerging topic. If you look at the literature, especially in information systems or within the accountings or ESG, some of the study also embark into exploratory study that using qualitative or interviews, try to understand the topics, because not much we know about the topic because it's still very new, and we would like to know whether really, is it really the company use AI? If they use AI, what types of AI that they use, in which aspect of business practices or processes that they use? Is it in the manufacturing or decision making or by the marketing department and so on? So it's very new. And to answer your question in terms of the specific measurement related to AI, I think some of the archival study try to capture certain keyword that show the companies embark into digitalization or AI. So counting that phrases in the annual report as to quantify the company's effort or orientations toward digitalization. because there is no, I think, because it's still new, my personal opinion, there is no like very established measurement that been, but scholars come up with some way to quantify it from the annual report, looking at certain keywords that reflect or represent digitalization or AI. And we should admit that to get the perception, if you want to go for perception study and asking top management as well as board members through questionnaire is not easy. You will not get the response, isn't it? So that's why if we look at past research, perhaps they engage into archival or, I think they are more willing to, I don't know, in Malaysia, for example, the top management are more willing to talk to you rather than to answer the structured survey questionnaire.
All right, so more like the content analysis, that they are going towards the digitalization. All right, noted on that. So as we are about to end the discussion and the Q&A session, so I would like to thank Professor and also all the audience that have participated in the Q&A session. So right now, we are moving to the next agenda, which is wait for a minute. So, all right, we are about to take a group photos. So our team will help us to click the button. So I hope all the audiences can turn on your camera, and then the team will help us to click the camera button. So starting from the first slide, maybe. All right, I'm gonna count starting from 1, 2, and 3. All right, next one, to the second slide. From 1, 2, 3. All right, moving for the last slide. 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you so much for all the audience who have participated. So Professor, I would like to ask one question because there are so many audiences that request your PPT material. So are you willing to share it with us?
Yeah,
right.
sure.
All right, the team will then help to distribute the PPT material for those who ask. All right. So moving the next one to wrap up all the sessions today, maybe I would like to conclude like 3 things here. That the first one, the corporate governance involves into the relationship between the stakeholders, also allows policies, principles that also guide the organization's directions, just like what we talked also in the first and second question. And also the second point is that corporate governance also highlights the company's commitment to ethical business conduct and values to maximize the shareholder value on a sustainable basis. And there, the other point is also that right now, the trend is also moving to the digitalization and also AI. So it's also important for us to dig more about it in terms of enriching the accounting literature towards the digitalization. So, all right, great. Lastly, I would like to say thank you once again to Professor Adwa for sharing the insightful knowledge with us in today's event. And also, I like to thank you for all the participants who joined today's event. And we will send the feedback form that you can fill in order to claim an e-certificate for this event via the Zoom chat. And also, you can scan the barcode here that you see in the screen to access the feedback form. Also, for those of you who are now working on your dissertation or thesis, you can join us into the Pejuang Disertasi group that will be shared by the committee by the Zoom chat. And we will have 2 minutes for us to fill this feedback form. and then we are going to continue to the end of the event. All right, 2 minutes. So right now 3:23, and then I assume we will have all the questionnaires, all the feedback form filled by 3:25. Okay, 1 minute left. So Professor, I think if we want to talk like more about the research, I think we're gonna need like another another fruitful session,
Yeah,
I suppose, here, because there are so many topics that we can discuss more about it. Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
next time
yeah,
or
yeah.
another future opportunities.
Yeah, I will pay a visit to Airlangga end of the month.
Oh, this month, in November.
Yeah. I will be there on the from 27 until 2nd of November, 2nd of December.
Oh,
So
great, great,
if
Professor.
time
Yeah,
permit,
wish to
if
see
time
you
permit,
soon.
I can drop by then.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Looking forward to meeting you. All right. So it's 3:25 already. All right, I suppose all the audiences have filled the form. So by now, I would like to say thank you once again for all the audiences and also Professor Adwa for joining us today until the end of the event. I hope the knowledge that we gained today can prove us to be beneficial. And also, I am Anissa. I am representing the entire committee. I would like to apologize for any mistakes or misspellings or also any other interfere throughout the event. And also, I would like to take my leave now. So, all right. Good afternoon, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. See
Thank
you
you
on
so
next
much
event.
for giving me the opportunity. See you around.
Yeah, Professor. See you around. Looking
Changes
forward
that are
to meeting you.
expected to accelerate
Thank
in the future.
you.
Various studies have stated that these climate changes are undeniable. The risks associated with climate change can lead to financial problems for companies. To achieve a more sustainable future, leaders need to collaborate and build partnerships in facing these complex challenges.